to see what can be learned from how the Danes do things in Copenhagen. And I think Copenhagen is probably one of the most egalitarian cities in the world. It's probably also one of the more sustainable cities in the world. More than half of the Copenhageners commute by bicycle. So I think in the small scale, we have found a lot of thoughtful ways of doing things. We turn our waste into energy, and we ski on the roof of the power plant that does it. Our port is so clean you can swim in it, so you don't have to drive for hours to get to the beach. You can actually jump in the port in the middle of the city. So it's all these little things that are not very grand. We don't have the architecture that you have in a city like Berlin or Paris. It's not a grand city, but everything is very thoughtfully made. And I think the sum of all those little things ends up creating an ecosystem that actually has a great impact. So I think there's a lot of those things that can inspire and be brought to other places in the world. Like in Sydney, they call the bicycle lanes Copenhagen lanes, because they sort of copied them from Copenhagen. And I think there's a lot of other examples that would make it worth the trip. And if nothing else, the food here is incredible. You will not keep. I think very simply, in the next couple of months, we'll be 8 billion people on Earth. And the United Nations expects the global population to stabilize around 10 billion in 2050. So you can easily calculate that the city of the future is already here, because we will only be 25% more. So a big part of our job as architects will of course be continually to rediscover and reimagine new uses for old structures. But of course, if you inherit an old structure and breathe new life into it, that's even more sustainable, or can be even more sustainable. So we should really think about, why is it that it's amazing for an architecture office to have a factory that was built for making bottle caps? It's because the factory has been built with the generosity of having large spans. Because daylight is free, they created huge windows. So that kind of raw beauty and generosity of the structure allows us to appreciate it and come up with new ways to live with it. So this idea of the ticket to eternal life in architecture is really to make buildings that people love and care for. And I think we understand now that people are different. Therefore, of course, the way we live should also be different. And that's why I think the answer for how to live in the future is not an answer. It's an incredible diversity of very, very different answers. And in my sort of living career, I was born in a tiny house by a lake. So a tiny house, beautiful garden. Then I've lived in a whole variety of apartments and lofts in New York, and I'm finally living on a houseboat here in Copenhagen. And each time, I would say, currently I would say you cannot, on a good day, there is no better way to live than to live on an old ferry in the middle of the King's Copenhagen, or the Queen's. But on the bad days, when the power goes out and the pumps are striking and the heat suddenly stops, then it can also be the worst way to live. So I think the answer is never one answer. It's always the diversity and the availability of diversities.